Hello and welcome back to Super Hell, aka the Mystery Spotcast, a show where two recovering Supernatural fans subject themselves to a rewatch so no one else ever has to watch Supernatural again. I'm Klaudia, my pronouns are she, her, and you can find me on social media at Klaudia Says, K-A-L-U-D-I-A Says.
My name is Ollie. I use any pronouns, and you can find me on social media at Ollie Fresh with a PH. Rise and shine, Sammy! We made it! Pig in a poke, we made it! It's the Mystery Spot cast episode of It's the Mystery Spot episode of Supernatural, which this podcast is named after. We made it! We made it, boys!
The infamous... Wow, I can't speak. The infamous Mystery Spot episode that you've seen all the memes about, that we named our episode after, that visually our logo references. This is what it's all about. And objectively, it is a good episode. We will be spending, in honor of our podcast, we will be spending all of today's episode on the Mystery Spot. Mm-hmm. And it's objectively a good episode. And a good episode for, like, maybe not the plot, but definitely emotionally there are a lot of emotional stakes.
Yeah.
I did forget that this episode got sad.
No, same. I mean, I feel like I remembered it was tragic, but I feel like I thought it was funnier. Like, it is funny, because I know what happens. I was laughing my ass off at a lot of the more a lot of the more emotional parts. I was like, this shit is hilarious. But it still, like, has these emotional parts where I was like, oh, fuck you.
It also has a couple things that, like, knowing what happens at the end of the series, you're like, oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is dark. It's getting so dark. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's. I'm so ready to talk about it. Let's fucking go.
Yeah. For those who don't know, this is the time loop episode, the Groundhog Day episode. So it's also, you know, in early seasons of Supernatural, they do a lot of the formulaic, like, we gotta do this kind of episode, you know, the thing that you love to see from a procedural. Wish we had more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wish we had more of that.
Yeah, I do too. This episode starts. We see a close-up on Sam's eyes as Heat of the Moment by Asia plays very loud, like the chorus. It's like, heat of the moment. And Sam wakes up, and Dita's like, rise and shine, Sammy. And he's like, has his boot up on the bed. He's like getting dressed. They're in a motel. And Sam like gets up and clearly is annoyed by how loud the music is. And he's like, Asia, really? And Dean's like, yeah, I know. His radio station's great. You know, this is a great song. And Sam's like, yeah, and I'll kill myself if I hear it one more time. Which is like, uh-oh, Sam. You might not want to say that so early, so soon. They start getting ready. Dean is, like, getting dressed and is being just, like, so annoying. Like, he's being loud. He's, like, gargling really loud. And as they're, like, getting ready to go, Dean's just, like, taking a long time. There's a part where he's, like, going through his stuff. Sam's, like, waiting at the door for them to leave to go get breakfast. And Dean is, like, looking through his bag, and he grabs, like, a bra. And he's like, oh, Sam, is this yours? And I'm like, why the fuck do you have a bra? Did you steal that from a woman that you were engaging with?
Bras are expensive.
No,
they're
literally.
Expensive.
But
also, this, for an episode that is a time loop, this gag is never mentioned again.
No, literally. But he's like, oh, is this yours? And Sam just clearly, like, rolls his eyes. Dean puts it down, and then he finds his gun, and he's like, bingo, and puts it away.
Dean in his homophobic and transphobic era is so...
Dean also... The fact that Dean is not practicing proper gun safety by putting your gun in your bag with your bra, that's hateful.
With your bra?
Mm-hmm.
He just, like, puts it in his bag. He just throws it in there, like lipstick.
Yeah.
You're like...
Exactly.
I think if someone went with a fine-tooth comb through Supernatural
mm-hmm.
and, like, the number of times that they did not practice proper gun safety, it would be atrocious. Like,
I would love a What's in My Bag tour from Dean Winchester. Dean Winchester's What's in My Bag tour, and he just goes through, he's like, this is my bra, and this is my gun, and that's it. Anyway, so they go to this local diner, as they walk in, Dean is like, I don't know if this is really our kind of case, man. Like, it's just like a guy who disappeared. As they're walking in, there's a guy like paying up front at the counter, and the lady's like, oh, drive safe, and he's an old guy, and he's like, yeah, whatever. And then as they are going to their seat, we see a guy at like the counter ordering, and the waitress is like, you know the rules, Cal, if you don't order something, you gotta go. And Cal's like, okay, I'll have a cup of coffee. And there's like another guy sitting there eating pancakes, which will all become relevant later. So it's important to remember those things. But Dean and Sam are talking about their case. They go to sit down at their table, and Dean's like, yeah, I don't know, it just seems like a guy who went missing. Like, that doesn't seem that weird. And Sam's like, well, no, he disappeared at this place, the Broward County mystery spot. So he's like, I just think, like, this is a little weird. He shows Dean a flyer that has, like, oh, physics don't apply here. And Sam's like, it could be, like, a wormhole or something like that, where it's, like, sort of a, like, something opens up and it's, like, pulling things into different universes, doing all this stuff. It might just be weird. Like, maybe this guy
doesn't he reference
here.
Like the Bermuda Triangle or something?
Yeah, he's like,
oh, like there's places in the world that are just, they got funky magical shit going on, and you're like, okay, accepting that as a part of the world building.
Yeah, the Bermuda Triangle is canon in Supernatural, but Dean's like kind of skeptical. He's like, yeah, okay, well that's like ridiculous, because this place, like, these kind of places, Sam, are like, they have chairs nailed to the ceiling and they have balls rolling uphill because of, like, you know, whatever. It's just a tourist trap. And also, for those listening, the real mystery spot is what the Mystery Shack from Gravity Falls is based on. So, at the end of the day, it always comes back to Supernatural. No. Yeah, listen, my belief... Wouldn't it be fucked up if Gravity Falls and Supernatural took place in the same universe? They obviously don't, but it would be funny. I mean, that would imply that Crowley and Bill Cipher have met. Because they're demons. Bill Cipher, that's a whole other thing. However, I do think that we should be shipping Grunkle Stan and Bobby. So, can we have that conversation? If someone draws us fan art of Grunkle Stan and Bobby kissing, and also Crowley and Bill Cipher kissing, I think that would be funny. That would be great. Or you know what? Why not all four of them? Bobby and Fiddleford McGucket. Okay. I like where your head is at. Anyway. Wait, if we go into AO3 right now and look at Gravity Falls Supernatural fanfiction. Let's find out. But also, you know that the Pines siblings would literally hand the Winchesters their ass. Oh, absolutely. Like, are you kidding? Well, here's the thing. I feel that Dipper would be way more willing to make a deal with a demon, because he does canonically, like, 5 times. And so does his sister! No, like, they would be, I love them to pieces, but I feel like they would be way more easily, persuaded to do things than Sam and Dean would be. To be quite fair, so do Sam and Dean. The number of times that they just make a deal because they're like, I gotta save my brother, and then I gotta save my brother back, which is kind of a thing that is covered in this episode. Like, the number of times they're like, I would never deal with a demon, cut to them making a deal with a demon or doing some shit like that. I mean, they canonically do as well. That's fair. I can't find any fan fictions that ship Bobby Singer and Grunkle Stan, so if we could get on that, that would be great. No, but like, what is the crossover? There is selection. We can't get into that now. I can't do it. Like, I'm not strong enough. But is it decent? Or is it just a little bit? It's probably it's only a little bit. I could not find a lot. Anyway. Damn, Tumblr.com, what are you doing? Okay. Anyway, so as the boys are sort of debating, like, what they're gonna do, they decide they're gonna go visit the mystery spot, whatever. But they're sitting at this table at the diner, and Dean looks up at the board and says, oh, pig and a poke, which is, like, the special. That's what the special is called that day. And, but that's a famous line, famous gif of Dean being like, oh, pig and a poke. So, yeah. But then Sam goes, do you even know what that is? And Dean's like, no, but I think it's neat. And you know what? I actually have a fun fact. Oh, what a pig in a poke actually is. And this is direct from the Supernatural wiki. On medieval market days, the gullible might buy a pig in a poke, a baby pig in a cloth sack, without checking that the content really is a valuable piglet. What they really got was a worthless cat, so a pig in a poke is a con job or a worthless object presented as a thing of value. Quote, letting the cat out of the bag, in a sense, of revealing a secret, comes from spoiling the same scam.
It's foreshadowing?
Yeah.
Whoa, okay, you know what, Supernatural? You might have been cooking with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, what?
But it's...
all these years.
It's so funny. But anyway, Dean's like, oh, pig in a poke. And the waitress comes over and is like, what can I get you boys? And Dean's like, a pig in a poke with a side of bacon. And Sam's like, yeah, I'll get a short stack. And she's like, okay, great. So she leaves, and then she comes back to give them their coffee. And she goes, okay, here are your coffees. And a bottle of hot sauce falls off of her tray and shatters on the floor. And she's like, oh, crap. And then, yeah, that's it. So... then we cut to Sam and Dean. They're walking down, like, a city block. They're still talking about the mystery spot. Some of the conversation that I talked about that happened in the diner kind of happens here as well, but for our purposes, it's all the same conversation. But as they are walking towards the mystery spot, they walk past a barking dog, like a golden retriever. There's this blonde woman who bumps into Dean and is like, oh, excuse me, and keeps walking. There are these two movers who are trying...
She's also holding flyers.
Yeah.
And, like, rushing along.
Yeah. Then there are these movers, and they're trying to get a desk inside the building, inside of a building, and a guy's like, oh, I said it wouldn't fit, and the other guy's like, oh, what, do you want a Pulitzer? Then the boys decide they're gonna go to the mystery spot after hours so that they can investigate while there's no one there. We cut, it's the night, it's dark. We see them open this door, and if you've seen the logo of our show, it kind of looks like that, but it's like this black and green spiral on the inside. And they open... it's like an optical illusion also, because you're looking at a hallway from the inside, yeah. And it looks like a flat spiral, but it's a whole hall. It's a 3D, it's an optical illusion. It's fun. Yeah, it is fun. But they walk in, and they start wandering through, and Sam is using, like, the EMF reader, and Dean walks in, and he looks up, and there's, like he had said earlier, there's furniture nailed to the ceiling, and he's like, wow, it's uncanny. Sam, do you even know what you're looking for? And Sam's like, yeah, for sure. Well, no, not really. And they're just looking around, trying to figure out if there's anything weird going on. But they kind of realize, like, it's just kind of a tacky tourist trap. But as they're wandering through, they hear a shotgun cock, and this guy is like, nobody move. What are you guys doing here? Are you robbing me? And it's clearly the owner of the mystery spot. And Dean has his gun out because he already had it, and he's aiming it, and he goes to put it away. He's like, yo, okay, don't worry. We can explain. We're not here to rob you. Don't worry. And the guy is like, no, don't move. And Dean's like, I'm just going to put my gun down. And the guy, like, sort of misfires his gun, and it shoots Dean square in the chest. And Dean flies back onto the ground, and Sam rushes over to him and, like, is holding him in his arms and is like, no, Dean, you can't go this way. You can't do this. Go call 911. And the owner rushes to go get help. And we see Dean kind of look up at Sam and then take his final breaths and die. And Sam's crying. He's freaking out. And then what happens? But it's the same shot from the beginning. Asia's Heat of the Moment is playing. We see Sam open his eyes, and Dean's like, rise and shine, Sammy. His foot is up on the bed. He's tying his shoes. He's, like, lip syncing to the song, and he's bobbing his head. And it cuts to Sam, and he's, like, a little confused. But he's like, okay.
Also, objectively, the first time that Dean dies, he's like, no, you can't go this way. And objectively, that is very funny, because he's like, you can't go in the stupidest way possible when we hunt demons for a living. Knowing that Dean does go permanently in the stupidest way possible when they hunt demons for a living, watching that scene was abso-fucking-lutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I kept being like, oh wow, so it is just like the rusty nail. The rusty nail haunts the narrative, one could say.
Period.
It's so very... Anyways.
So the boys go to the diner again, and it's like the same scene. There's the guy at the front who the lady is like, okay, we'll drive safe. And he kind of makes a face. And there's the guy ordering a cup of coffee, and the guy sitting at the counter, and they go to sit down at their same seats, and Dean's like, oh, pig and a poke. And he orders the special, with a side of bacon and a coffee. And the waitress is like, oh, and what'll you have? And Sam's like, oh, nothing. Don't worry. And Sam is clearly, like, having sort of deja vu. And Dean's like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And Sam's like, nothing. I just had a really, really weird dream. And the waitress comes over and goes to put their coffee down, and the hot sauce, which fell before it goes to fall, and Sam catches it. And she's like, oh, thank you. And Dean's like, oh, yeah, good reflexes. And Sam's like, yeah, thanks. So they go back out onto the street, and they walk past this dog, the same dog, the woman with the flyers, the movers, and they're talking, and Dean's like, all right, so let's go over to the mystery spot before it, after it gets dark, once it's closed. And Sam's like, no, let's go. Hi, Peach. But
Peach knows what's about to happen. Yeah. Much like me remembering this episode as I was watching, Peach knows what's about to happen and starts laughing.
Sam is like, no, let's not go now. Let's actually go now while they're open. I think that would be better. Just, just while it's crowded. And Dean's like, okay. And they've kind of stopped on the sidewalk. But Dean's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, let's go. And he walks into the street slightly in front of Sam, and a car that's being driven by the guy from the diner who they're told, like, oh, drive carefully, fucking hits him. He flies up into the air and, like, spirals around in the air and lands on the ground. It's
kind of funny, to be honest.
No, it's so fucking funny. I was laughing my ass off. But Sam, like, rushes over and grabs Dean, and he's like, no, like, you can't die, don't die like this. And he's like crying, he's freaking out. Then what happens? We see Sam's eyes. Heat of the Moment by Asia starts playing, and Dean's like, rise and shine, Sammy, and goes through the exact same thing. And we see Dean like gargling like he did in the first part, and Sam's just like staring at him. And
I will say also in this is the, I guess, the first loop or the second loop.
This is the second loop.
This is the second loop or whatever. In the last one, right before he died, Dean is making fun of him and being like, oh, so it's like deja vu. And he's like, no, it's not. It's not like deja vu. And they're like fighting about it, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
And also Dean also makes he makes this really off-color joke with pretty much a slur in it that I will not repeat, that will become unfortunately important later at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Because Sam is like,
I had this really weird dream, and Dean is like, oh, is it clowns or a not nice word for little people?
And you're just like also Dean is like, Dean is also very problematic in multiple ways in this episode. Like the bra thing, the whatever. Like,
yeah,
he's
just
saying,
a
shithead. Back and forth episodes, depending on who's writing it, he's either just like a shithead insulting everyone, like when he was calling Bella like a bitch and shit like that, or he's like normal. He's either like calling his brother gay for like reading a book or like knowing what a fairy tale is, or like saying a slur, or he's like normal. There's nothing in between. And this is one episode where he's just kind of saying out of pocket shit the whole time,
yeah,
and then immediately dying right after.
Period.
This
Consequences have come for Dean Winchester. This is cancel culture.
Cancel culture has come for Dean Winchester. Is really the and comes for him again and again. I mean, and when it is revealed why, that is also kind of kind of a little bit, but also
no, it's not.
I mean, kind of. but it's more like he's canceling Sam, I guess. But I will say this episode is also the reason why Supernatural has like a gift for everything, because there are some things that they say that are very specific. Where there's some things that they say that are. Isn't there a line that Dean says like right before he gets hit by a car that's like very iconic, and I can't remember what it is.
I'm sure he does. I just don't remember.
I don't remember. But yeah, this episode is like half of the like we have a gift for everything in Supernatural as well. And Dean's in his problematic era. I just have to point that out.
Love. So, as I said, Asia's playing. Sam wakes up. He sees Dean, like, doing his morning gargle and being annoying, and he's just, like, staring at him. So, they go to the diner, and Sam is like, okay, but I'm telling you, it's like a time loop. And Dean's like, oh, what, like Groundhog Day? That's kind of ridiculous, right? And he's like, no, I'm telling you, it's true. Dean's like, Sam, that's kind of like wackadoo. Like, that's like Dingo ate my baby crazy. Like, that's not happening. I'm like, first of all, Dingo ate my baby. The dingo almost certainly did actually eat the baby, so fuck you. But, Dean is like, okay, there's no way that this is actually happening. And Sam's like, no, hang on. And the waitress comes over to deliver their food, and the hot sauce goes to fall, and Sam catches it, and Dean's like, whoa, good reflexes. And Sam's like, because I knew it was gonna happen. And Dean's still kind of like not believing him. So they cut back to the sidewalk, and Sam is like, I'm telling you, it's something that happened at the mystery spot. Like, something is weird about that. As they're walking,
and
they
Dean says that's kind of some X-Files kind of shit, yeah, and you're like...
Because there is an episode of the X-Files where this exact thing happens to Mulder. But, they're back on the sidewalk. They walk past the Golden Retriever, the woman with the flyers, the movers, and Dean's like, okay, let's go to the mystery spot. After it closes, we'll go check it out. And Sam's like, no, we have to go now. And Dean's like, all right. And he goes to walk into the street, and Sam's like, wait, and grabs him and pulls him back. And then we see the same car that hit him the day before fly by. And Dean's like, oh, wow. And then Sam is like, he told him kind of at the diner, like, alluded to the fact that he was really nervous. And Dean's like, well, why? Like, what happens? You just wake up? And he's like, well, it's because you die. Like, the first time it happened, you got shot, you got blown away. And then Dean's like, okay, so then this happens. And Dean's like, oh my God, that car almost hit me. That was crazy. And Sam's not laughing. And Dean's like, oh God, is that like how he got me? Did it look cool? And Sam's like, what do you mean? He's like, did it look cool? Like in the movies, like getting hit by a car. And Sam's like, you peed your pants. And Dean's like, well, of course I peed my pants. Man gets hit by a car. He doesn't really have control of his bladder.
That's the line. That's the line. It's like, when you think Supernatural has a gift for everything, it literally, like, any possible situation, yeah, getting hit by a car and peeing your pants, they got a gift for that. Like, they literally, like, of all the things to say, of all the things to have in that conversation, what?
No, like, I'm obsessed with Dean, too, being like, of course I peed my pants, fuck you. Anyway.
I love, this reaction to that is so, it's so, like, Sam is like, I'm really going through something, and he's like, okay, but did it look cool? Also, Dean is still actively in his actively suicidal era, because he's like, okay, but did it look cool? Like, Dean, girl, help! Oh, it's dark.
Anyway. It's dark out here. So they go to the mystery spot, and they're posing as reporters, and they're asking questions of the owner, the same guy who shot Dean 2 yesterdays ago. And the reporter is kind of giving them the whole shebang. Like, he's like, well, this is a place where physics don't matter and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And Sam starts getting irritated, and he's like, okay, well, how does it work? And the guy's like, well, take the tour and you'll find out. And Sam's like, no, I know something crazy is going on here. Like, this is ridiculous. And Dean's like, okay, let's calm down. And the guy is like, listen, I used to sell bond bales. He kind of, the owner kind of cracks because Sam is being crazy. And he's like, I don't know what kind of article you're writing, but I'm telling you, like, I used to sell bond bills. I bought this place at a bankruptcy, what is it called? Bankruptcy auction?
Foreclosure auction.
Yeah, he's like, I bought this place at a foreclosure auction. Like, there's nothing more to it. And Sam is like, no, I'm telling you, something else is going on. And what about this guy who disappeared? Did he do the tour? And the guy's like, whoa, okay, I told the police. Like, I didn't even see this guy. I have no idea anything about that. And Dean's like, all right, come on, dude, let's go. So they kind of step away. And Dean's like, okay, you need to calm down. In order to break this loop, maybe we just need to do something that hasn't happened yet. Why don't I just not die?
They're having this conversation on their way back on that same street.
Yeah.
Where they're like when they're walking out of the diner.
Yeah.
It is now nighttime and they are having their conversation on that same street.
Yeah.
And they are stopped in front of where the movers were.
Yeah. So Dean's like, okay, all I have to do is not die, right? That should break the time loop because you always wake up right after I die. And Sam's like, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea. And Dean's like, okay, well, let's go back to the hotel, get some takeout, and we'll hang out. Dean takes a step forward, and the desk that the movers were trying to move upstairs comically falls on him and crushes him. And there's a big fake, like, Supernatural-esque blood splatter that they always show in this show. And you just see, like,
fucking Looney Tunes.
No, and you just see Dean's feet, like he's the fucking Wicked Witch of the East, getting crushed. And the movers are, like, looking up. One of them is holding a rope, and the other is up in the window of the floor above trying to pull the desk through. And Sam just, like, looks on in horror. And then we see his eyes open, and Heat of the Moment starts playing again.
This is also why, if you play Heat of the Moment by Asia around a group of people who may or may not have seen Supernatural, and you look at their reaction on their face, they will all go through something.
You will be able to tell who is the Supernatural watcher.
Even if they think they're cool now, you will see it in their face.
No, I will say every time I hear this song, like, on the radio or whatever, it always makes me think of this. Like,
I'm always
rise
and shine, Sammy!
No, literally. So, they're back at the diner, and it kind of cuts through, like, Sam has already told Dean about the time loop, and Dean clearly looks very skeptical, but he's like, okay, so I just have to not die, but I need to break the cycle, like, by doing something different, right? Hey, sweetheart, and he's talking to the waitress, and he's like, can I please get sausage instead of bacon? And she's like, oh yeah, sure thing, hun. And he's like, see, I didn't do that last time. And Sam's like, yeah, you didn't. Maybe that'll do something. And the waitress brings over the food, and Dean takes a bite of his sausage, and he's like, yeah, well, and he starts to choke. And then it cuts. We hear Heat of the Moment, and Sam opens his eyes again. Then it cuts, and they're like, Dean is like, oh, so we can't leave the house, not even for breakfast? And Sam is like, no, we can't. We just have to stay here. And Dean's like, okay. And he goes to take a shower. And then we hear him being like, and slip and fall. And we hear a thud. And then we hear Heat of the Moment.
It's literally that dumb ways to die.
It really
so
is.
Many dumb ways to die.
Then it cuts. The two of them are sitting eating tacos. And Dean's like, man, this is ridiculous. We should leave the house, or we should do, like, he's kind of protesting. And then he's like, do these tacos taste funny to you? And then we hear Heat of the Moment, and we see Dean getting electrocuted, plugging in his razor. Then we hear Heat of the Moment again, and we see Sam and Dean, and they're at the mystery spot. The owner is duct taped to a chair, and Sam's like, and Dean's like, yeah, man, I'm really sorry about this. I promise no one's gonna get hurt. It'll be over soon. Sam has an axe, and he's, like, tearing the place apart. And Dean's like, hey, Sam, you're going a little crazy. I think maybe we need to take another approach. And Sam's like, no, Dean, I keep seeing you die. I keep doing all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. They start arguing. Dean gets up, and he's like, hey, man, give me the axe. Give me the axe. They're off screen. We're looking at the guy, the owner, who's taped up, watching them fight. And they're like, no, you give me the axe. You do the, you're blah, blah, blah. And they start fighting. And then we hear the sound of the axe, like, squelching. And Sam being like, oh my god, Dean! And then Heat of the Moment starts playing again.
The implication that he killed him that time, you're like, oh.
No, I know. And we see the blood splatter on the owner's face, and it's so funny. I'm like, oh my god. This episode is hilarious.
It's almost like a premonition to the number of times that they actually watch each other die for real. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So by this time, Sam is like extremely agitated. They're at the diner, and we see the waitress, and Dean orders the Tuesday special, which is the pig and the poke, with a side of bacon and the coffee. And Sam tells the waitress, like, hey, Doris, you might want to clock some more hours at the archery range because you are a terrible shot. So it's implying that Dean has died this way and that there have been deaths of Deans that we have not seen. And she's like, oh yeah. And she leaves, she walks away, and she's like, oh, how'd you know I was a terrible shot? And Sam's like, oh, it's more common than you think. So she leaves to go do their thing, and Sam pulls out a set of keys and he puts them on the table, and Dean's like, what are these? And he's like, it's the old guy's keys. Trust me, you don't want him driving. That guy Cal over there, who's at the diner ordering coffee, or who's at the counter ordering coffee, he's gonna rob a bank later today. And Dean's like, okay, well that's ridiculous. And at the same time, Sam says the same thing that he's saying. And then they have this scene where as Dean is reacting, Sam is saying the exact same thing. So they're both like, what? No, that's ridiculous. I'm Sam Winchester and I cry myself through sex. I'm Sam Winchester and I love wearing makeup. And it's like, at the same time, Sam is saying these things because Dean is like trying to trick him.
I love how the things that he's having him say are just him being like, here, like a girl. And I'm like, Dean, we have to get it together.
But
come on.
But he says all these like random absurd things and proves his point. And Dean's like, okay. And then the waitress comes over. She drops the hot sauce again. Dean catches it, or Sam catches it. And Dean is like, okay, this is crazy. So they go out and they're walking on the street again. And Dean is like trying to wrap his head around it. And they walk past the dog. We see the old man, who's looking for his keys, which Sam took earlier. And Dean is like, so how many Tuesdays have you had to live through, like, to do this? And Sam's like, this is my 100th Tuesday.
And he looks fucking haggard.
Oh, he's like pissed.
He's like angry, whatever. And he's like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
This is my 100th Tuesday. And you're like, holy shit.
I think he may have actually said that while they were still at the diner.
Yeah, but they were.
I digress. It was still funny. But the woman who's carrying the flyers runs into Dean. And Dean's like, have I ever done this before? And he turns around and he's like, oh, excuse me, ma'am. And he comes back and he's like, Sam, you went through 100 Tuesdays and you never thought to ask what kind of flyers she had? And Sam's like, what do you mean? And he's like, that was this guy's daughter, the guy who's missing, the guy they're looking for. And Sam looks at, it's like a missing poster, and he runs to go follow her to ask her some follow-up questions. And this golden retriever is standing there, and Dean is like, aw, hey bud, you need a friend? And goes to pet this dog, and it cuts, and we hear growling and like the sound of Dean being mauled to death by a dog, which is funny because I'm like,
inadvertent foreshadowing there.
The idea of also Dean getting killed by a golden retriever is so funny, because I'm not saying that a golden retriever couldn't like mess you up, but I feel like Dean Winchester would fight back. He would not get killed by a dog. Not that kind of dog, at least.
Also, how dumb is he that he's petting people's random dog? Like, don't do that. How stupid are you?
Asia plays. Heat of the moment. We cut. Sam is at the diner. He's already kind of explained what's going on to Dean. He turns around his computer. He's like, okay, so the guy we're looking for debunks tourist traps. He's like, I've read basically everything he's written. He seems like kind of a huge asshole, because he just kind of goes and points out how stupid tourist traps are. Like, he's just kind of a dickhead. And Dean is like, oh, well, it's kind of funny that this guy always gets his just desserts and then goes to the mystery spot and, like, disappears in one. And Sam's like, yeah, it's funny, his just desserts. As they're getting up to go, the guy who's sitting at the counter who's eating pancakes gets up and leaves. And Sam looks over at his pancakes and he's like, strawberry syrup. And Dean's like, what are you talking about? He's like, that guy always gets maple syrup. Why would he switch it up? And Dean's like, okay, well, guy can't choose his syrup. It's a free country, Sam. And Dean's like, you can't even choose your own syrup anymore. What has become of this country? But
cancel culture.
Cancel.
It's come for syrup.
So true. But Sam is like, no, you don't understand. Nothing changes here. Like, nothing ever changes. This means something. This is the first change to happen. And suddenly Asia plays. And Sam wakes up. Which is funny because it's the first time this has happened where Dean didn't die. So Sam immediately is like, okay, something's fucking up. So we cut back to the diner. The guy who was eating the pancakes leaves. And Sam goes to run after him. And Dean's like, hey, what are you doing? Dean notices that Sam is carrying, like, a paper bag. And he's like, what are you carrying? What's in the bag? Sam runs up and follows this guy into an alley and pulls out a wooden stake and holds it up to his neck. And he's like, I finally figured out that you keep repeating Tuesdays and you make me watch Dean die every day. And Dean runs up and is like, Sam, like, whoa, let's calm down. And the guy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Please don't kill me. I have a wife and 2 children. And Sam is like, well, the only person who'd be powerful enough to do this is some sort of god or a trickster. I know what you are. And he's like, and we've killed one of your kind before. And then the guy says, no, you actually didn't. You just tried. And transforms into the Trickster played by Richard Speight Jr., who we saw in an earlier episode.
Which they spoiled at the beginning of the episode because his name does crawl across the screen at the beginning of the credits of the episode.
Yeah. But Sam is like, whoa, and Dean is, like, shocked that this is actually real. But Sam has this stake up to his neck, and the Trickster's like, okay, I'll admit it's been fun killing Dean every day, but okay, you don't need to kill me this time. The joke's actually on you. Like, it's not on Dean killing him. Like, that's been fun. But the joke is on you, Sam. Like, I need you to get the point that you can't save your brother. Like, you can't. It's pointless. It's futile. And Sam's like, okay, well, I'll kill you. I'll kill you right now if you don't let us out of this time loop. And the Trickster's like, you know what? This stopped being fun. Joke is off. You're gonna wake up tomorrow and it's gonna be Wednesday. And he snaps his fingers. And Sam opens his eyes, but what? What song is playing? Not the same. It's actually Back in Time by Huey Lewis and the News. Sam looks over. He looks
hundreds of What's New Pussycats with When It's Not Unusual thrown in.
He looks over and he realizes that the clock says that it's Wednesday. And Sam, like, jumps up. And he's like, oh my god, no Asia. And Dean's, like, in the bathroom brushing his teeth. And he's like, yeah, I know, this radio station sucks. And Sam's like, no, is this not, like, the most beautiful song you've ever heard? This is amazing. And he's all enthusiastic. And Dean's like, yeah, okay. Geez, how many Tuesdays did you live through? And Sam's like, oh, what do you remember? And Dean's like, well, I remember waking up on Tuesday. We went to the diner. We hunted down that Trickster. Then he snapped his fingers. And that's pretty much it. And now it's Wednesday morning. And Sam's like, all right, awesome. We got to get out of here. We just have to leave. And Dean's like, okay, sure. So we cut. Dean is putting his stuff in the trunk of the Impala. And he hears someone come up behind him. And he's like, Sam, are you sure we should really just let that Trickster go? And then we hear a guy say, give me your wallet. And Dean turns around and realizes he's being held at gunpoint by the guy who was ordering coffee at the diner who Sam had said was going to, like, rob a bank later that day. So Dean is like, okay, hey man, we don't have to fight. Don't worry, it's no big deal. Let's talk about this. We cut to Sam inside and we hear a gunshot. Sam rushes outside. He sees this guy, Cal, like, hightailing it away, and rushes over and sees Dean on the ground. He just has, like, a bullet hole in his chest and he's dying. And Sam grabs Dean and he's like, no, please, it's not supposed to happen today. It's Wednesday. This is not supposed to happen. Please, I'm supposed to wake up. And he closes his eyes like he's trying to wake up, but nothing happens. The day just keeps going on. And he starts to cry. And it's really fucked up.
It gets crazy fucked up from here.
No.
You're like, oh.
Then we get a very dark montage.
One could say it's really giving the last episode of Supernatural. Anyway.
Fuck you. But we get this really dark montage of Sam. He's almost robotic in a way. He has this.
It's his American Psycho era. Like,
no, it's okay. Not what American Psycho is about.
It's not. I'm saying visually.
Oh, where he's very like robotic and has like a dead look in his eyes. Yeah,
and he's doing the same fucking thing like constantly.
Yeah,
it's a little creepy, to be honest.
But there's this. It's just this montage of Sam. He has the Impala. He's been hunting alone. We see him like looking at. It's a montage of him like basically going hunting and just being really brutal and pulling off some big kills. And over the course of this time, we hear it overlaid with Bobby leaving him voice messages and being like, hey, Sam, heard about that demon that you got rid of in a, some other place. Heard about that vampire nest you got rid of in Austin, Texas. Good job on that, but it's been 3 months I haven't heard from you, so if you could give me a call, I'd really appreciate it. Let's touch base. Then it cuts, like, Sam is brutally killing monsters. Bobby's like, hey, Sam, I hope you're not by yourself somewhere freaking out over this trickster. I'd really like to see you. I miss you. I hope you're okay. Let's talk soon. Then we get a little crawl on the thing that says 6 months later. So it's been 6 months since Dean died that Sam has lived. And then we get a call from Bobby being like, Sam, I found the trickster. And we see Sam have this like realization in his eyes and it cuts. We also see like over the course of that like montage, Sam like stitching up his own gunshot wound while we hear a voice message from Bobby being like, hey Sam, come find, like, let's talk. We see him like eating alone we see him like eating alone in his room, cleaning his gun, all this stuff. We also see that he's been like tracking the trickster, like we see all the pinpoints in the map, whatever. But Bobby's like, I found him. So Sam goes to Bobby and he's at the mystery spot. And Bobby runs up and hugs him. He's like, you boy, I've missed you so much. I hope you're okay. You just need to, stick through it. I found a summoning ritual to summon the trickster. We know this is the last place to use his magic, so this will work. But it only works once. And if we don't do it tonight, then it's going to be 50 years until we can do it again. And Sam is like, okay, well, what do we need? And Bobby's like, well, we need about a gallon of blood. And it has to be fresh. And Sam's like, Bobby, that means that we'll have to basically bleed an entire person dry. And Bobby's like, yeah, I know. And Sam's like, okay, I'll go find someone. And Bobby's like, Sam, I'm not going to let you kill a person. I wanted to tell you this to see that you wouldn't do it because you've been acting crazy. Like, this is not the answer. We can't do this. And Sam is clearly, like, willing to kill an innocent person to do this, but he starts kind of thinking about it, and Bobby's like, you know what? Here, if you want to do this so bad, here. And takes a knife out of his bag and hands it to Sam. And Sam's like, what do you mean? And Bobby's like, you boys are like the only family I've ever had. You need your brother, and I'm willing to do this. I'll do this for him, for you guys. And Sam looks really upset. He's like, I'm not going to kill you, Bobby. And Bobby's like, no, I want to do this. And Sam's like, okay. He takes the knife. Bobby goes and kneels down, back facing Sam. And he's like, just make it quick. But as this is happening, Sam puts the knife away and pulls out a wooden stake. And he's like, okay. Except for the fact that you're not Bobby, and stabs him through the heart. And Bobby falls face first onto the ground and starts bleeding out on the ground. He's dead. And Sam's like, huh. And nothing happens. And Bobby's just not moving. And Sam's like, Bobby? And he starts like crying. But then Bobby's body dissipates in a thing of smoke, and the Trickster emerges, and he's standing behind Sam, and he's like, Sam, that was really impressive. That was really impressive that you were able to clock that was not your friend. I thought I was doing a pretty good job. And Sam turns around, and he's like, please, I just need you to help me. And so Trickster's like, what do you mean? He's like, please just bring Dean back. And he's like, no, Sam, I can't do that. And he's like, yes, you can. And he's like, yeah, you're right, I can. But you need to learn to let him go. Dean is your weakness. We all know it. Like, every sort of monster, every enemy you have knows this. And they know that you will sacrifice each other, or sacrifice yourselves for each other. And nothing good will come from that. Only pain.
And boy,
yeah.
And boy, was he right.
Yeah. But he's like, this is what life is going to be like without Dean, Sam. And Dean is going to be gone. Right now, he's struggling in hell. And that's what's going to happen. And Sam's like, please, he's my brother. And the Trickster's like, yeah. And sometimes this is what happens. Which is fucked up when you know who the Trickster actually is.
No, literally.
Like,
I was like,
what?
I was like, first of all, given who your brother is and the beef you have with your own brother. Second of all, I'm thinking about the Rusty Nail again, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, wow, they really, okay. Wow,
it's fucked up.
Also, it is not really explained why the Trickster.
I mean, I have a feeling why. It's not explained in this episode, but after you find out the importance of Sam and Dean in the greater narrative, I'm like, I understand why the Trickster was so intent on this.
Yeah, but at this point, he didn't really care about the stuff in the greater narrative. He was kind of fucking off.
And I get that, but I think that I could see him having a moment where he's like, you know what, maybe this will be my moment where I'm like, I gotta kill one of these bitches off so the grand narrative doesn't come to be.
Or he's like, because the grand narrative would really harsh my vibe, and...
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm having a good time.
That's literally the plot of Good Omens. Anyway, but the Trickster... Sam is like, please, he's my brother. And the Trickster's like, oh my god, it's like talking to a brick wall. Fine. This stopped being fun. I will do this for you. And he snaps his fingers. And Sam wakes up in the motel room on Wednesday with Back in Time by Huey Lewis and the News playing on the radio. And Dean is there, and he's brushing his teeth. And Sam, like, sits up in bed, and he looks around, he looks at Dean, and Dean's like, I know, no Asia. Radio station sucks. And Sam, like, jumps up out of bed and runs over and pulls Dean into a huge hug. And Dean is like, oh, how many Tuesdays did you live through? Like, the same question he asked him last time it was Wednesday. And Sam is like, nothing. A lot. Enough. And then Sam is like, okay, let's go. Let's just get out of here. And Dean's like, all right, cool. I'll go start loading up the car. And Sam's like, no, just wait for me. Let's go together. And Dean's like, okay. Did something else happen? And Sam's like, no, I just had a really weird dream. Let's go. So the boys are getting their...
Wait, he says, I had a really weird dream. And that's where Dean says,
once again, clowns or derogatory term. Then we see Dean and Sam, they're leaving the motel room. As they're going to go, Sam looks back and looks at the unmade bed. And it's clear that he's kind of thinking about the fact that, like, this is going to happen again. Like, he is going to have to live without Dean at some point. But he closes the door and leaves, and then the episode ends.
It's fucked up and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're like, oh, wow. Like... the Trickster being like, I have to teach you a lesson about how to handle grief. So I'm gonna fuck with you in the craziest way possible.
No, it's such a... He is like the professional hater. Also, at the end, him being like, okay, well, you begged me enough. This is where that ship comes from. Because a lot of people... A lot of people ship Sam and the Trickster. And I'm like, this is exactly where the fuck that manifested. You can tell.
Yeah.
Like, this is where people were like, wait a minute. Do you think the fact that this ship existed before Destiel is kind of crazy to me?
Wait, it did...
Because Cass was not even, like, conceived of at this point.
We can't be doing this.
It's so fucked.
Wow. Wait, I wish we could find the first Sabriel fic on...
We can find it. I guarantee. Give me, like...
Well, on AO3, but they might have been posted in other places.
That's true. Oh, shit.
We're in prehistoric eras.
This is, like lost media.
Fanfic.net.
Not even. It could have been posted anywhere. It could have been a fucking...
Searching for Sabriel.
Live journal.
Fanfic.net.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, wow. It's... God, this episode is so...
It's a lot.
It's iconic. Dean is extremely problematic, the whole time. It also is... What? It's just so wild to watch. There's so many things that they say where you're like... Well, literally, in the last episode,
like, it foreshadows to the point that you know it was not intentional.
And you're like, oh wow. Like, and it foreshadows, like, so many things that keep happening again and again, to the point where you're like, oh wow, this is dark. Well, and there's a line, I feel like, at some point, that they say where I'm like, oh, that's the whole point of the show.
Yeah. It's the scene where the Trickster is, like, dying for each other over and over again is only going to bring you pain. Like, you need to learn to let go.
And there's something also about, like, free will or something that they say or whatever, and I was like, oh, that's the whole point of the show.
Because Dean's like, well, if I just change what I do, then I'll, like, subvert fate, and it won't happen again.
And you know what? That's what happens at the end!
No, the ending of this show is so fucking stupid. It literally, like, misunderstands the thesis of itself.
Well, I would say not the end of the show. The second to last episode understands it, and then the last episode doesn't.
If it had just ended there, we would have been fine. We don't need to know what happens. And also, now there's never going to be able to be a continuation or a, here's what's going on, because, like, these actors need to get line their wallets with CW money. Like...
Well, and here's the thing, and this is also why we, like, named the podcast The Mystery Spot, because, like, in essence, that the show, like, it's like a microcosm for the show itself, because in the show itself, the brothers are caught in this constant loop of one of them dying and the other one sacrificing himself for them over and over, and then never learning, and then at the end, a little bit of spoiler alert, they're like, oh, we have to break the cycle of free will, whatever, and they're literally caught in this almost Groundhog Day fucking cycle to the point where they will notice when, like, the plot is the same, and the beats are the same, and the conversations are the same, and it's like a microcosm for the whole show, but it's also a microcosm for liking the fucking show, because you are, like, when we've joked about, like, we're literally trapped in it, we cannot escape, and every Tuesday we are fucking back here, that's what it's literally like every time, I mean... The day before we tweeted this, Twitter broke, and right before Twitter broke, Misha Collins fucking tweeted something, and I was like, it's like, I'm back, Tuesday Pig and a Poke, Asia is playing, I'm back, and it's like, please release me, I'm Sam in the loop being like, I'm so tired. Like, people are like, do you like Supernatural? And I'm like, no, whatever Sam is in this episode, that's how I feel about Supernatural.
Yeah.
I'm caught in a loop constantly.
Like, let me the fuck out. I can't do this anymore. But then I keep being like, well, I'm gonna sacrifice myself for this fucking show again.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm here because I love Dean Winchester, but I'm not having a good time.
Exactly. And even when I am having a good time, it's undercut by the fact that I know I'm gonna be having a bad time very soon.
Like, literally, it's wow, it's this episode is meta in a way the French Mistake wishes it was.
Exactly. So, because of this historic event, because we are finally covering this episode, I thought, mayhaps, instead of talking about a second episode today, I want to play a little game with you, where I'm going to give you some trivia,
Ooh.
and you are going to have to tell me if this is actual trivia about the show,
Okay.
Or if it is, like something that I've made up. Yeah. So, are we ready?
Is it supernatural or did Ollie just make it up?
Exactly. So the first thing I have is the filming for this episode takes place in Steveston, British Columbia, as well as being used to resemble Broward County, Florida, which is funny because this episode's supposed to be in Florida, but everyone's wearing like long sleeves and jackets and stuff, so I'm like, okay, but I digress.
And isn't the real mystery spot in the PNW?
Yeah, I think so, yes. But anyway, this location doubles as Mystic Falls, Virginia in the Vampire Diaries. Is that true, or did I make it up?
I'm going to say that's true because they use the same... Well, I mean, they use the same 3 sets on the Warner Brothers lot, but also they do also all film in Canada in the same 3 places. So I'm going to say that's true.
You're wrong. This location was actually used for Storybrooke, the town in which all the fairy tale characters live in Once Upon a Time.
Wait. That is an objectively insane fact. So you're telling me the episode of Supernatural where they are caught in a fucking loop is the same place where they film the TV show about the fairy tales who are stuck in the fucking town and can't leave.
Yeah.
Also, the combination of the 2 worst fandoms on the internet. Oh. Okay, because I did recognize some of it. And I was like, why do I recognize this? And the fact that I knew intrinsically it was from fucking Supernatural.
Yeah.
That's so dark. Like,
yeah.
Oh, that's shaking. That has shaken me in a way I cannot. Oh, wow. We can't be doing this.
My next fact. Jensen Ackles says death by taco is his favorite death scene in this episode. So there's the scene where they're eating tacos and Dean's like, does this taco taste funny to you? And then he dies.
I'm gonna say that's true.
You got it right. That one is true.
I feel like he'd be like, that's a little tee-hee ha-ha.
Yeah, he thought that was a little goofy. I have 2 more for you. Initially, Only Time Will Tell by Asia was going to wake Sam up on Wednesday instead of Back in Time by Huey Lewis in the News. However, production wanted to go with something a little more upbeat shortly before shooting and subsequently rewrote certain lines to reflect that there was, quote, no Asia, quote, on the radio station. And just like for context, I did go and listen to this song. Only Time Will Tell. It's like, it's on the same album. It is like meant to be like the sister song to Heat of the Moment because it's about like about like a breakup and about time telling about like healing wounds and moving on.
Yeah. Also, this is a side note. This highly romantic, weird shit. There is also a line that Dean says where he's like, that is kind of sexual or whatever. And I'm like, hey, can the Wincest exit the chat, please? Can we please exit the chat? It keeps happening, and I need you people to stop. I need it to end. It's even in this fucking episode. Like, end the madness. Because technically Heat of the Moment is also... Okay, anyways, like, we can't be doing this. I'm gonna say that's true.
I totally made that one up. Just like that was so random. I was just trying to think of something funny to say. My last one I have. Jared Padalecki regards this episode as one of his favorites. He enjoyed the range that it gave him to work with as an actor, specifically the last portion where Sam must continue on without Dean.
I'm also going to say that's true. I feel like I heard him say that.
Well, you misheard. Jared actually regards this as one of his least favorite episodes since he had to cry all week and it was emotionally taxing.
Okay, so that was one of my favorite episodes because he had to suffer.
So true. Okay, you know what else I love about this episode? This is a total side note, but what I love about this episode is that I believe, in my heart of hearts, we never find out, like, if Sam actually lived through this 6 months without Dean, or if it was all part of the illusion. I think it's implied that it was like he actually did live this, but I personally believe it was an illusion, because 6 months pass where in reality, in what actually happens, after 4 months of being dead, Dean gets ripped out of hell, whereas that does not happen in this dream world. So I'm choosing to believe that not because of like a writer's strike or anything, like not because of what was actually happening that made this episode the way it was, and they were like, oh fuck the writer's strike, we have to write a really fast end, and then we have to find a way to bring Dean back once the writers get off strike. Instead of it being like that, I'm obsessed with the idea of this Trickster just being like, I'm just gonna fuck with him and make him live 6 months in a dreamscape.
Also, again, like the Trickster, like the amount of power that he has to be able to do shit like that, you're like,
God damn, can you just...
Do any, spoiler alert, do any other angels have that kind of power?
Well, okay, like, to be fair, he is like an archangel, but like, even so...
Does Michael?
No, I know, I'm like, that bitch is not doing that. Oh, also...
I mean, he does do something like that, I feel
guess, but like...
But I don't know.
I just think it's funny. I guess
Metatron does.
Yeah, Metatron's kind of cunt. Not in a good way. He's like a cunt.
Yeah. He's just a cunt. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's all we have for today. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. For more cursed supernatural content, follow us on social media. We're at Mystery Spotcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr. You can ask us questions in our TikTok Q&A, our Tumblr Ask Box. You can email us at themysteryspotcast@gmail.com. We're always happy to hear things you guys have to say. If you enjoy the podcast, you enjoy listening to us suffer, please rate and review the show. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, Overcast, anywhere you can, or tell a friend. It really helps people like discover the show. We don't do any advertising or anything, so we always appreciate it. If you want to hear more from us, we are two of the co-hosts of RuPaul's Pod Race, the Queer Star Wars podcast. We're doing a lot of fun stuff over there right now, prepping for Ahsoka. And without any further ado, we will see you 2 Tuesdays from now for more slaying people, queer baiting things, the supernatural business.